In this lessons episode, explore why entrepreneurial success depends less on perfect ideas and more on rapid collisions with reality. Discover how embracing flawed concepts accelerates iteration. Understand why quick and simple tests reveal insights that planning cannot, and uncover how creativity and persistence drive founders towards solutions that truly work. So that was the first iteration of Netflix, and I want to pick up on some themes that have sort of permeated that process, but also things that obviously you speak about now. So before we go down that story even further, the concept of it will never work, the game that you played, why is that your core theme? What does that mean? Why is it so important? This is an entrepreneurial lesson.
Well, on the surface, every single person who has an idea, who fancies themselves an entrepreneur, hears that. It's what everybody says when you come rushing with great excitement into the office to tell them this new idea. It's what your wife says to you. It's what your investors say to you. It's what your employees say to you. It is the universal response to, I've got an idea. But I've realized that nobody has any clue whether it's going to work or not. That, in fact, there is no possible way to really know in advance whether an idea is a good idea or a bad idea without trying it. So that will never work. You know, it's the name of the book. It's the name of the podcast. It's the name of the clubhouse room. All the things I do revolve around that will never work, because it's a reminder to me, and I hope to everybody, that it's just unknowable. And that if you let someone say, if someone tells you that will never work, and you walk away from that going, oh, I guess it won't work, you've made a grave mistake. That what you have to do is go, well, we'll see, and then move to that next phase of saying, we're going to figure out some way to find out.
But that also ties into another theme that you speak about quite often, where no ideas are good ideas. So it's almost at a high level, without understanding, it's conflicting. But walk me through the no ideas are good ideas concept as well.
So anyone who's worked in any kind of corporate setting has sat in on a brainstorming meeting where the well-meaning moderator gets up in front of the group and goes, okay, let's get some ground rules here. Rule number one for this brainstorming session is there's no such thing as a bad idea. And I call bullshit on that. I think, in fact, there's plenty of bad ideas. In fact, I'll go out on a limb and say they're all bad ideas. In fact, there's no such thing as a good idea. Every idea is flawed. They're all not going to work. There's always something wrong. I have never found a successful company that became successful doing the thing they originally envisioned. And if you recognize that no such thing as a good idea, that they're all bad ideas, what you recognize is it's futile to keep searching for this perfect idea. That, in fact, what I've got to do is recognize the skill here is not coming up with good ideas. The skill is figuring out a clever way to try something, to quickly and cheaply and easily collide your idea with reality. That's why I harp on the fact that there's no such thing as a good idea. I don't want people to get stuck in this rut of, I keep finding flaws in my... Listen, forget it. Stop thinking about it. Start doing something. Take the idea, and as soon as you can, collide it with reality. And you are going to find out that it's a bad idea, but that's fine. Mm-hmm. But the important thing is not that it's bad. The idea is, why is it bad? Because usually, in association with all the reasons you realize it's not going to work as you envisioned, it informs your intuition. You get some insight into what might work. And you come, oh, okay, let's try this, and let's try this. And it's that process of iteration, of jumping from stepping stone to stepping stone, that ultimately does lead you to a place which is interesting. And, you know, I've worked with so many companies, the size of the companies that I've done, but since I left Netflix, which is, 15 plus years ago, I've now had a chance to work with hundreds of early stage companies and thousands of entrepreneurs. And over and over and over again, the things that finally work are never the first thing you try. It's always this really interesting process of starting and seeing where those collisions with real people lead you.
Why do you think that so many entrepreneurs seem to over-iterate on that MVP as opposed to trying to have that conflict and real feedback with reality, with real people to actually validate, very similar to the way that you did with just simply mailing a music CD to Reed's house? Do you have
I think, listen, if you're building an MVP, if you're building a minimal viable product, you're building too much. And the problem, and it's whether it's an MVP, whether it's actually raising money, all these things that people do because they think that's how this works. You get emotionally invested in an approach. And the more effort you put into that approach, the harder it is for you to acknowledge it's not working, the harder it is to walk away from it. I mean, even a minimal viable product sometimes takes weeks or months, or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so you're not about to go, oh, didn't work. Okay, abandon this. Let's try something new. Which is why you've got to figure out ways to do it super cheaply, super simply, super quickly. And it's parsing it apart. You want to build a minimal unviable product. And listen, I'll give you a couple concrete examples here. You do not need to test all the components of your idea, because most of the components of your idea, if you begin parsing it apart, don't need to be tested. You don't need to say, can we build an app? You don't need to worry, is someone going to trust me with their credit card? You don't need to worry about whether your app can know where you are. I mean, this stuff has been generated not just that it's technically possible, but that customers accept all these things. And you begin to isolate in on what's the one piece of it that I truly don't understand. Well, listen, rather than wasting time with kind of gives high-level Instagram-worthy quote tile bullshit, let me give you a specific.
Those are also good, but I mean.
Yeah, and everyone, it's like junk food. You nod your head and go, oh, that's so interesting. And then you go back and go, wait. How do I do this? In fact,
okay, so let's have some real examples then. Let's have something.
Promotion aspect here. It's the point of the podcast that I do, which is I could certainly go on social media and say, trick is to quickly, easily collide with the reality, and everyone will nod. But then it's missing the how. And so in the podcast, I'll sit down with someone for half an hour, who has an idea, and we'll brainstorm through how. And you see how this works. But let me give you a specific example. You do it right now. This is from 2 or 3 years ago, a bit more than that, actually. And it's a young woman in college and had an idea, and I do a bunch of mentoring work at universities. And she goes, I had this great idea, quote unquote. She wants to do peer-to-peer clothing sharing. She goes, I have all this stuff in my closet that I never wear. I know all my friends have stuff that they don't wear. Wouldn't it be great if we had this huge network of people who were all showing us their clothes? We could all borrow each other's clothes. And I go, okay, pretty cool. What are you worrying about? And she goes, well, should I quit school to do this? How do I raise money when I'm just a student? Or how do I find a technical co-founder to build this app for me? And I'm like, whoa, slow down. Or more importantly, speed up. I go, let's figure out quickly, cheaply and easily, whether your idea is a good idea or not. Do you have a piece of paper? And she goes, yes, I'm a college student. I have paper. I go, fine. Do you have a Sharpie? She goes, yeah, I can find a Sharpie. I go, great. So I want you to do is take the paper. I want you to write in the paper, want to borrow my clothes? Knock. And I want you to tape it right now to your dorm room door. And we're going to start this experiment now. And you're going to find something out. Either no one's going to knock. Well, then you've learned something pretty important right there. But let's say people do knock. Well, you're going to learn the next phase. Okay, first of all, there's interest. But now what happens? Are there problems with fit? Are there problems with style? Are there problems with taste? And let's say there is a match that way. Now you're going to find out the next thing. How do you feel when your blouse comes back stained or torn? How do you think about the fact you now have to bring everything to the dry cleaners, and all of a sudden this begins costing you more? Let's say it all works, and all of a sudden you're going to start this process of learning and recognize how many times does someone repeat? How do I find people to do this? And you're going to do all of this not by building an app, not by raising money, not by starting a company. You're going to do it with 3x5 cards or a yellow pad. You're going to do this in a non-repeatable, non-scalable way because you're going to figure it out on the ground. But the point was, her problem wasn't, well, can I make an app? How do I get credit cards? How do I... Yes, those are things she would have to do if she was to make it a real business. But she narrowed it down to the fundamental problem was, does anyone care? And I can find that out with a piece of paper and a Sharpie. Okay, now I wonder the problems with fit and taste and style. I can find that out on a very, very small scale test of people who live in my hall. And then what will happen is, hopefully, after 6 months of doing this out of her dorm room with 3x5 cards and a yellow pad and going crazy because it's so manual and so labor intensive and so inefficient. But that's great, because then when it comes time to say, I think I might like to make this a real business, and you go to raise money, you're not waving your arms and going, imagine if you will. You're able to say, I understand now what the repeat rate is. I know what the average order size is. I know what my churn is. I know what my acquisition costs are. Or, even more importantly, rather than going to an engineering friend and saying, I want you to build my idea, which I can assure you as the marketing guy never works, you sit down and go, let me show you what I'm doing. And I'm doing it all with paper. I'm doing the 3x5 cards. And that's when people lean in and go, oh, that's so cool. Maybe we could do it this way or this way, and they get pulled into the problem. So it solves so many problems, but the fundamental one is, rather than dreaming about it, you do it quickly and easily and cheaply by parsing out what's the one thing that you really need to test. And once you've figured out that one thing, usually that one thing can be tried without technology, without raising money, without other people, without an office, without quitting school, without leaving your day job, without mortgaging your house. You can do it on the side. You can do it quickly, cheaply, and easily. It's the trick, the thing that's the most important thing, I believe, for an entrepreneur who's starting something. And what I look for in the entrepreneurs that I want to work with is not how good their idea is. Because, as we mentioned, I fundamentally believe all ideas are bad ideas. What I'm looking for is, do I think this person has the creativity and the persistence to say, I'm going to figure out quick, cheap, and easy ways to try this and keep trying things until I finally stumble on something that actually does work. You mentioned, why do people stick with their MVPs for too long? Because they put so much time and effort into it, they're not willing to walk away. But if you stick something on the front of your dorm room, you wrote in a piece of paper, and that doesn't work, well, you wad it up, you throw it in the trash, and you write something different the next day. And then you wad that up and throw that in the trash and try something different the third day, and eventually someone knocks. That's the process.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this valuable, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you want to dive deeper into this conversation, check out the links in the description to watch the full episode. See you in the next one.